Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters Podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today. In today's energetic, enthusiastic, passionate, and just infectiously optimistic conversation, I have the absolute pleasure of speaking with Nigel Best. Nigel's story is one of remarkable growth, community engagement, and really a career marked by transformation, empowerment, and really, honestly, meaningful contributions. It actually all began with his role as a postman, a 13-year commitment that laid the foundation for passion in education and community development. In 1993, driven by a shortage of black teachers, he seized an opportunity that demanded a return to education and skills development. That is an incredible story. Hear how he transitioned from that life as a postman. And we talk about working hard. I mean, squeezing the hours out of your day and balancing fatherhood and life and paying the bills and developing yourself and realizing that just because he spent 13 years as a postman, he has an ambition to do something different and transitioning into teaching and later into policing as well. He seized that opportunity and it demanded a big humility pill, that big swallow of his pride and going into being a student again. Next, it unfolded for him at Nottinghamshire University, where he spent 4 years immersed in education, including rigorous PGCE programs. Armed with a bachelor's in education honours degree, he embarked his teaching career at the Forest School in Hydson Green in Nottingham in 1997. He did roles in the head of year, assistant head responsible for community cohesion, and that's when he first started working with the police. That stretch into the community extended into the collaboration with local constabulary, leading with the involvement in independent advisory groups and working on this stop and search scrutiny group. This allowed him to help start shaping police-related challenges around stop and search, advocating for fair and just practices. In 2001, his dedication expanded into mentoring young black and minority ethnic teachers as part of a national coaching and mentoring program. The pinnacle of his career at the academy was in 2006 when he received a School of Distinction Award. This recognition was a testament to the mentoring program he had spearheaded, which supported African, Caribbean and mixed race boys in achieving remarkable academic results, something that defies the expectations of society and attracting widespread media attention. Then in 2020, he moved again and recruited into the careers advisor work with Nottinghamshire Police Service, bridging the gap between career aspirations and practical skills among young adults. This involves working with a lot of local educational institutions, outreach programs, and emphasizes on recruiting underrepresented groups. He also then moved again into the leadership space, working with leadership development teams, contributing to the retention of black and minority ethnic officers and staff. He finished his time working with the executive member of Black Police Association, BPA, dedicated to supporting black and minority ethnic staff locally and nationally. In May of 23, the exciting development of a program which sits within the PRAP, Police Race Action Plan. The program takes police officers and staff from Black history journey from a transatlantic slave trade to present day. That part of the conversation I just found fascinating. Talking about the Windrush. What does it mean, the Windrush generation? In January 2024, he finally retired from Nottinghamshire Police and started his own diversity consultancy, which led me to meet Nigel at the Asian Fire Service Association, where he was speaking and spoke so passionately and optimistically and engagingly, which he does today. Nigel has probably got to be one of my favourite guests over the past few months. This is a short but interesting and engaging conversation with Nigel, where we talk about education, teaching, personal growth, Windrush, his DJing career transitions, family involvement, professionalism, youth engagement, knife crime, media influence, policing. There is so much. So if you're dealing with diversity training, recruitment challenges, mentorship, community representation, the perception of authority, empathy, Nigel has got so much to offer in this conversation. Coming from Barbados to the UK, Nigel is just a fantastic example of personal agency. He's the sort of person that, despite all of his challenges, he didn't allow life to happen to him. Nigel is very much someone that is happening to life. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. I absolutely loved it. Nigel is a really, really present individual. It was an absolute pleasure to have a conversation with him. So without further ado, please welcome my friend and guest, Nigel Best. I'll see you on the other side. How would you describe what you do?
What I do, the best way for me to describe that is I I'm really good. I'm really passionate about what I do. And I would say that I'm giving information over it and I'm making people more aware so they can do a better job in the future.
So we first met at AFSA, which for people who are familiar is the Asian Fire Service Association.
Yeah.
There's a number of great speakers on there. But what I found most appealing about yourself was your overwhelming gregariousness and passion and playfulness with the subject matter. And some people see first responding, certainly police, they see it as a very difficult thing to wrestle with because it's full of legislation and legal elements, and unfortunately police aren't sometimes the most popular person. They're there to save someone, but they're also there to ruin the bad person's day. The fire service is quite lucky. Usually most people are glad to see us, but your career didn't start anywhere near policing, did it? This episode is brought to you in partnership with Godiva Limited. Godiva is one of the world's leading providers of specialist equipment for emergency services market. Renowned for innovation, quality and reliability, Godiva produces a comprehensive range of fire pumps, including vehicle-mounted, portable, and their cutting-edge integrated total water flow control system, SAMFlows. I've been using Godiva my entire career as a reliable pump on the fire ground. It is such a crucial element of a successful firefighting team that you want to empower your crews with the very best, reliable, quality product. Reach out to our partners by checking the notes in the podcast. Now back to the show.
Nowhere near. I mean, if you look back, because when I start my presentations with the police, I literally started, I came to the country in 1966, long time ago, mate. That lovely year that England won the World Cup.
You know what? I was at a Space Centre recently and I saw that. The old first time when the World Cup's, they had the old timeline on the wall and you were like, my God. So where did you come from originally?
Originally from Barbados. Lovely little place called Oistins in Barbados, yeah.
What was it like coming to the UK in the 60s?
Oh my God. It was tough. It was really tough because my, excuse me, my dad came in 1959 and my mum came in 1961. And then I joined him in 66 because that was just the norm, especially for the Windrush generation. That was just a normal thing. Parents come over first, then send for the kids. But my dad had a bit of a shock to his system when he arrived because of all the racism they faced, especially in London. It was really tough for him, really tough. So for me, I had to adjust. So coming in 66, for me, I actually remember going to school, to primary school, and the first thing I noticed, Pete, was all the lessons, the work they gave me was so easy. And I went home and I took my homework home, and my mum looked at it and she was disgusted because we Barbados. Give you a quick example. We are fifth in the world for literacy. The UK is 15th, so we're fifth. So basically, I was 2 years ahead. And my mum marched to the school and knocking on the head's door and said, hang on, what's this? And he said, oh, that's what we do with all the kids from the Caribbean or whatever. And my mum was living, they gave me a test and I got 100% of this test. So they put me back up to the classes I should have been in. So that was the first sort of like shock that, we were seen as different.
Why do you think there's such a strong work? Because you do hear this a lot from, in fact, more important question, because myself included, explain when people refer to the Windrush. Just unpick that a little bit for us, because so many in my generation, including myself, won't be familiar with a lot of this. I think when we talk about inclusivity and racism and stuff now, to some of the younger generations, it's like we're speaking a different language because I've been raised around an enormously multicultural society. I'm not going to be one of those people that says, "Oh, I don't see colour," but I don't see people as different. I'm like, you're taller, you're shorter, you're white, you're black, you're this, you're that. But, it's almost one of the comedians' lines when they always say like, oh, when did you come over, Nigel? And he's like, well, I was born here, 10 years ago. Or something. But, it's always that thing. I'm not fresh off the banana boat, Dave. I forget who that guy is. He's really, really funny. I think he's an Indian comedian. Anyway, what was the Windrush?
Windrush, you're talking anybody that came between 1945 and 1971. They're classed as the Windrush generation. But the actual Windrush itself was a ship that was commissioned. Well, it was actually taken over after the war by the British. Before that, it was a German ship called the Monte Rosa. And the interesting thing about that ship, Pete, a lot of people don't realise is the ship got its own history, because in 1930 it was built by German and Jewish shipbuilders. Wow. A bit of a shock, really, that is, when people learn that. And that was a shock. And then in 1942, it carried over 2,000 Norwegian Jews all the way to Auschwitz, that particular ship, which is a bit of a shocker. So 1945, the British took it over and renamed it the Empire Windrush.
Okay.
So 1948.
So many people were brought over for work,
in 1948. That
their own volition.
That picture you always see is in 1948, where over 500 people from the Caribbean got onto that ship in 48. But when I look at that picture, I always think, what happens if they knew about the history in 1942? Do you think any of them would have got on the ship? They probably would have thought, I'm not getting on this.
Can you imagine? But even for your dad and yourself, but I mean, you were obviously young and you were impressionable then. The sheer braveness and just like not blind optimism, but like to get on a boat. There was no, you weren't ringing over, sending an email.
Yeah.
You were just, maybe you read it on a leaflet. I don't know how it was sold to people back then, that we're going to go there and we think it's going to be like this. People were heading into the unknown. The bravery that takes now, like for people of my generation, excuse me, they like fear moving 20 miles away from home. They'll move shires, or no, I don't want to go and work in London, or I don't go to Manchester, because we're so entrenched in where we've grown up.
Yeah.
But back then, and it wasn't a global village back then. I say we didn't have this interconnectivity that we have now. I just want to acknowledge your parents and thousands of others.
Yeah.
That was just so mind-blowing to me, and to so many people listening. And this wasn't long ago. We're talking 60 years ago. This is not long.
It's crazy. It's crazy, because my parents, when they came over, like a lot of other people, you're talking over between 45 and 71, over 200,000 came over to help rebuild this country.
Yeah.
A lot of them came over because they felt it was their duty, because they're part of the British Empire.
Yeah.
And they came over, a lot of them came over on British passports, because if your country was ruled by Britain, you were considered British.
Yeah.
And it was that simple. So when they got here, a lot of them got the shock of their life when they saw all the racism and stuff like that.
Yeah, because they saw themselves as British, which they are, and they were.
Yeah.
But I also think this, like, I've read a lot of military books, and you hear about the Gurkhas and stuff like that, and
Same.
they were almost more committed to the British Empire than some of the British.
Yeah, they were.
And I think if, there's the whole Ukraine conversation you hear sometimes here, and we're like, if Britain was invaded, how many people in their early 20s would step up and go, yeah, I'm proud to be British?
Yeah.
If you say British pride, it now has a really strange connotation to it, some kind of BMP, racist. Like we don't fly our flags anywhere or anything like that. But I see people from the Caribbean and even from America and places like that, they're just so much prouder of their heritage. And I think that's a bit sad, perhaps, for the UK. I
think it's really, really sad. Really sad.
Yeah. So you came over. How old would you have been then?
8 years old.
8 years old. My God. And kids are petrified these days going to the Sunday club to start a new football game because they don't know anybody. What was it like? You said about entering into school, being treated as less than, having an assumed lower education. You must not be an intellectual person. You probably can't read or write. How did you calibrate that amongst probably knowing nobody?
It was tough because the school I went to in London, we lived in Kilburn, and the school we went to was quite multicultural. So there was other kids from other parts of the Caribbean there. So we also had to navigate ourselves really, and we had to learn how to fit in, and we had to integrate ourselves. And we did it through a lot of us did it through sport, because a lot of us could, in those days, if you're black and you're good at sport, they sort of like pushed you into that sort of sector. So that was, I think, really, that was a bit of a leveller.
Yeah. So when did you start to feel like you were more a part of the society, and then sort of take us on to what you decided to do when you left school?
When I left school, my passion was art, graphics and art. So I wanted to be a graphic designer or engineering. So, in fact, I tried both of them when I left school and didn't like them at all. I ended up working for Royal Mail, which is amazing. I did. I thought I'd do a year for Royal Mail while I was making my mind up. Ended up doing 13 years for Royal Mail. 13 years, which is incredible. 1992, I thought, you know what, I want to do something different. Completely, family life changed, circumstances changed. So I decided I want to be a teacher. So I went back to college, did one of those lovely access courses that we used to do. Did the access course, and then started university in 1993. Graduated in 1997 as a design and technology teacher. Pardon?
How old would you have been?
Oh, I graduated in my 30s, so I went as a mature student. So you're talking 33, 34, going back to uni, which was quite tough, really. Because if you've not been in education for a while, then you go back to university, you're mixing with all these 19, 20-year-olds. That is something you have to adjust to.
Let's expand on that, because the bravery, again, that takes. I know so many people, and you'll know so many as well, who aren't particularly happy in the thing they're doing, but like equally for yourself, I've been in Royal Mail for 13 years. This is a career now. I've got a pension. I feel like I'm invested in it. Maybe there's a pathway for me here. I think a lot of people had this during COVID as well, actually, where they're like, I don't think I enjoy the thing that I do. And it's a horrible realization. And I have this sometimes with people in the first responder community, because it becomes so much of their identity as well. Police, firefighter,
definitely.
doctor, paramedic. What did it take for you to go, because again, people have this in relationships, they have this in jobs. Sometimes it's not bad enough to stop doing it, but to immerse yourself back into education in your 30s. When you're in your 30s, I'm 35 now, and I look a lot older. You kind of feel like you should have your stuff together. I'm kind of an adult now. I'm going to go back to school.
Yeah.
You kind of have to raise your hand and admit that, you know what, I'm not the same person I used to be. I think that's massive, and I think I just want to just expand on it a little bit, because I think it's something that a lot of people probably flirt with in the evenings when they're talking to their partners and they get into bed and they go, you know what, I hate this accounting job. I don't think I want to work at Tesco's anymore. Maybe I don't want to work in the fire service anymore. I don't know. How did you get to that activation energy?
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Gore-Tex Professional Fabrics. Now, we all know the working environment of a firefighter is filled with challenges. We face serious risks on the job, such as heat exhaustion, burns, physical and mental stress, and we frequently come into contact with high levels of toxic chemicals. Now, I have been wearing Gore-Tex for nearly 2 decades on the front line, working in hostile environments, tackling challenging incidents from firefighting to water incidents, and in urban search and rescue environments. Gore-Tex have a well-earned reputation for protecting professionals in the fire and emergency services through their family of highly innovative, waterproof, breathable moisture barriers that exceeds global performance standards and are trusted worldwide. Gore-Tex, going further together.
Well, for me, the strangest thing was when I was at Royal Mail and I'm delivering parcels that I was driving, and there was a college in Nottingham, Nottinghamshire, called People's College. And I used to deliver every single day to this college. You walk in with the parcels, and I'll never forget it. There was a silhouette, and it said, "We need more black." It actually said, "We need more black teachers," because in the 90s there weren't many black teachers around. So I kept looking at this silhouette every single day, and eventually I plucked up the courage to ask the receptionist, "What's that about?" And she said, "Oh, it's educational, a drive that we're looking at." So I said, "How do I get onto this then?" And she said, "Well, you've got to do an access course. And if you pass the access course, you're guaranteed a place at uni." And when somebody said you're guaranteed, I think that's sort of like alarm bells, thinking, okay, if I work for this, I will get this. Because as a mature student, so I thought, you know what, I'm going to go for it. And we started.
When your life is already, did you already have children by this time?
Yeah, had two kids.
That's what I'm saying. Your life is full.
Yeah,
like when people say, "Oh, well, I'm just going to take a university degree in the evenings through Open University or whatever." Yeah, okay, on top of everything else you've got going in your life, and also maybe if they're transitioning into a new career, like when people come into the fire service, "Oh, I'm going to go on an apprenticeship wage. I'm going to go back to 20k at 30 years of age."
The interesting bit was, I sometimes you forget about all the things you do. Is that I was still at Royal Mail at the time, and when I asked the lady, if I go on this access course, do I get paid? And she said, "No, you don't get paid." So I said, "Okay." So it's the whole year. So I went to Royal Mail, went to my boss, and he said, "Okay, if you can start at 5 a.m. and till 10, just do a first delivery. We can help you." So college started at 9:30. So I knew if I do this, my plan was in my head, start at 5, literally get out on the road by 7, and literally jog all my way round so I can get done early. So I finished at 9, and luckily at the end of my round was a lovely friend of mine. She was on maternity leave, so she would have my breakfast ready for me. She'd have her bacon. Yeah, she was brilliant. So at 9 o'clock, and then at the time I had a really old, the classic VWs. Yeah. With campers, I had one of those. So
mate, 9 o'clock, worth loads now. Beautiful cars.
Oh God, yeah, mate. I wish I'd kept it. So I would get changed in my camper, get changed in my college, jeans, and then she'd give me breakfast, and I'd get to college at 9:30. Evenings, I was DJing then, because I was a DJ as well. So for me, that's how I made it pay. DJing 3 or 4 nights a week. And college, but getting up at 5 every morning. Well, starting at 5, so you had to be up for 4 o'clock in the morning to get to work at 5. So some nights I weren't getting home till 2 DJing.
Now I don't want to sound like, I know we're at slightly different ages. I don't want to sound like the people who go, "Oh, the young people aren't dedicated anymore." But like, I say this about personal development. So we'll make it local for a second. Like I run this thing, I run the podcast, I get invited to a bunch of different things. I am not the best firefighter in the UK by a country mile. I'm not the best podcast host by a country mile. But all of this stuff is in your own personal time. You're doing it for free. You're taking time off work to do it. You're bending, borrowing, stealing time from all corners of your life to try and make this thing work. And no one else is going to get it. Because with all due respect, no one would care, Nigel, if you stayed a post person for the next 40 years, because you've got to have a plan for yourself, because if you don't have a plan for yourself, you fit in somebody else's plan, and guess what they've got planned for you? Nothing. They just want you to show up and do the thing. So like, help me try and like translate that level of, I mean, are we calling it dedication? Are we calling it discipline? Are we calling it hunger? I always say, like, stay friends with the hungry and the bored, because people are bored of the way things are and they're hungry for change. They're really, really exciting people to spend your time with. They can be exhausting. I know I exhaust my family and anybody. I think if I didn't have the podcast, I'd be far worse, because this allows me an excuse to have deep conversations with people so I don't annoy everybody around me. But like, talk to me about what kept you going through that period of time onto this next career of your life.
I think what keeps you going is that I love change. I love trying new things, because even with the DJing bit, I started DJing in the 80s purely by chance, because I worked for Nottingham Forest, Brian Clough, when he was alive, for 12 years. And that came about because there was a mate of mine who was the DJ at Forest for years, and he wanted a weekend off. And he couldn't get anybody. He never had a weekend off for ages. He was going to London. So I said, I'll do it. I'll do it. He said, have you DJed before? I said, never in my life, mate. So I actually had an hour's lesson with him. And in those days, you had the decks. You had the decks. You had to learn how to mix and things like that. But his last comment to me was, no, don't worry about it. Nobody dances, because at the time, at the Forest Football Club, who are doing really well now, Nottingham Forest, they had like a club with about 200 or 300 people that wait every weekend. And it was like a cabaret club where you had comedians on, you had celebrities from the Soap, from Coronation Street, things like that. And then in between, they had this food in between. So your DJ was more like a backing DJ, where you played a bit of music in the background, and the odd person might dance at the end. So he explained that to me. He said, whatever you do, don't worry about them dancing. Don't feel you're obliged. Okay. So he goes off for his weekend. I'm there, and literally got the decks, and it's my turn to go on. So you go on for half an hour, a break, another half an hour, and then a couple of hours at the end. And honestly, mate, I could not believe it, because I got on there. I was nervous. My wife said at the time, what are you doing? What are you doing it for? I said, try something new. I put my first record on. I'll never forget. It was Luther Vandross, Never Too Much. Puts it on, and it's playing away. And I turned around to start flicking through the singles, and as I turned around, the whole dance floor's full.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh mate, I thought,
keep the party going, baby. Come on.
What's happening here? And I thought, hang on a minute, don't panic. What would I listen to? What I like to listen to if I was on that dance floor? So I put on another track, very similar, mixing them all in, and it went down a storm. Right at the end of the night, the manager came up to me, he said, Nigel, how long have you been DJing? I said, not long. So I said, not long. He said, would you like a job? I said, not really, because it's my mate. He said, look, after what all the customers have come up and said, we need this DJ back. And he said, after what we've seen, we're going to sack him anyway.
Oh, bless him.
So I said, tell you what.
Oh, wow.
I said, I'm not sure. Come back to me in a month because I don't think it's fair.
Yeah.
They came back to me a month later and said, look, all the equipment's there. All you need is records. There's a lovely place in Nottingham called Rob's Records where you go in, and he sold a load of... So I went in there and spent 100 quid at the time, which is a lot of money then. And I bought myself a couple of boxes of records to get started. I did it for 35 years and 12 years for Mr. Clough. So
wow.
I know. Incredible.
I know. What do you think DJing taught you?
It taught me, I think, resilience. It taught me communication skills. It taught me things like just to be presentable and to be approachable, and what that was all about. Because I'll never forget, I got to do lots of weddings. I did stately homes. I did some very big marquees and nightclubs. I've done it across. So it taught me about adaptability, being able to... Friday night, I'm in the roughest part of Nottingham doing a pub where it's really rough, and the next day I'm at Beaver Castle, stately home, Leicestershire, doing a posh wedding with my dicky bow.
Yeah.
So it taught me about being adaptable,
building rapport, stand and deliver. Do you know what I mean? It's the same with this. Like when I listen back to stuff, I always say to people, start your own podcast. You haven't got to put it out if you don't want to, but just record one with your mate, record one with your partner, because when you listen back to it, you become so much more self-aware, hopefully, of your own verbal tics, the way you were coming across, the way you were communicating with Nigel. Were you responding to what he was saying? Were you listening to understand, or were you just waiting for your turn to speak? And I think those things, those sort of soft skills, as we refer to them, massive personal development keys. So you were going through this while you were doing your teaching degree. Yeah. You followed on to carry on with teaching. Talk to me about, because my sister and my partner are both teachers, and I of course have that audacity where I'm like, oh man, I'd love to be a teacher, like secondary school, just like, and my missus is like, you get sacked. You're far too flexible with your language. And I don't think you would. I think kids would love you, but I think the parents might hate you. Yeah. Talk to me about teaching back then.
My teaching back then, I still see kids now that I teach, and what's lovely is even the police officers that I work with, some of them are my ex-students, which still seems crazy. And even now, the police officers, they still call me Mr. Best or call me Sir. Yeah. And the cops are in their 30s. So that's strange. But teaching for me, reason why I went into it, because there weren't many black teachers at the time. And I kept thinking, how hard could it be? Because my kids have done well. They've been to uni. They've got good jobs. How hard could it be? I remember starting, and they put me on a project. And the project was, because a lot of black kids were doing so badly at the time, they were the most achieving group. Okay. Which it's changed now a hell of a lot. And it was always black boys that was underachieving. So they gave me a group of lads to hopefully raise their attainment, and I did it. And we had Channel 4 come, we had the Times Z come to look at what we did. And all I did was literally, I got involved with the parents. And I had about 15 boys. In fact, Nottinghamshire in 2006 got a School of Distinction Award because these boys achieved 85% of them. They achieved 85, something like A to C's. A to C's, which I think they were predicted E's and F's, and all of them got C and above.
So unpick that a little bit more for me. What was the change in it? Because I've read a few studies around, you give a teacher a class of students, and if you tell the teacher these students really, really struggle, they're not very high achievers, it's almost like we act into the expectation. It's the expectation effect, I think is what they refer to it as. Whereas if I said, I give you the same group of kids and said, Nigel, these are absolute, make sure you've got a bit of a stretch lesson ready for them because they're real high achievers. They will churn through this work. Same group of kids, different story, different outcome. Like, how did you begin to work with people that were perhaps a little bit lost, perhaps no one believed in them, perhaps everyone expected them to be a loser or a criminal, or I mean, I know you say you just involved the parents, but try and help us unpick that a little bit more, because again, I always say, and again, not to stereotype people as criminals, but anyone that finds himself in a bad place in society, they've usually also still got a massive amount of drive. Like, prisoners are fantastic problem solvers. You know, criminals are really not diverse thinkers. And if you can apply that, like, I'm a recovered addict. I used to inject lots of drugs in my teens and went through recovery in my early 20s. Addiction is just a character trait. You apply it to the right things. It's like an open hose. You can't switch it off. You just need to apply it to the right stuff. And it can be very, very, very useful. It's like a secret superpower. And I think about that with children that get themselves wrapped up into things that perhaps don't align with the values of society or even their own values, but it's just misapplied energy and passion often. But cracking that or turning the ship on that passion and directing it as something productive, that's like the impossible problem that I'm sure all educators and many people in society are trying to crack. MSA are supporting us on today's podcast, and I chose to partner with them because I've been wearing this stuff for nearly 20 years, and they are the global leader in development, manufacture, and supply of incredible, safe products that really protect people, not just our communities out there, but also first responders, most importantly, all over the world. Get yourself over to MSA and have a look at it. The high-performance protective clothing for emergency services responders. They also partner with us on the UK Pink Firefighters. It's because we love them. The helmets with the reflective visor, the F1XF, absolutely epic helmet. And not forgetting how they improve firefighter safety through their connectivity in the connected firefighter platform. That incorporates the M1SCBA, which is the tried and tested BA set. Everybody uses it in the UK Fire and Rescue Service. Then they combine that with the Luna module, which is a wireless all-in-one device, creating an independent search and rescue network, providing edge detection, enhanced personal thermal imaging, while simplifying post-scene reporting and data retention. Honestly, the edge detection element of it, go and check it out. Honestly, go and have a look on their website. Edge detection, it looks like the Matrix. It's absolutely awesome. In terms of an enhancement tool for search and rescue, it's literally unrivaled. MSA are always pushing the envelope, and it's a real privilege to be able to continue to grow our partnership together. So whether it's your PPE, your bunker gear, your helmets, your SCBA, your thermal imaging, your Luna, or your portable gas detection, both of us know that this equipment needs to work. It needs to be high quality, reliable, and dependable in the moment. And that's why I use MSA, because they know what's at stake.
For me, I remember one of the first things I did was you gotta get some sort of relationship with the kids. They gotta trust you. And I remember getting them all together, sat down, and I told them what we were going to do. I said, I know all of you are predicted quite low grades. I said, but we need. I think you can all do well. And the reason when I say get the parents involved, I invited the parents with the child. It was an evening event, and they all sat there. We even put on a bit of food for them. We put on a bit of Caribbean food, things like that. So that made them feel a bit more valued. We've gone the extra mile, and we just made it quite informal. And I told them exactly where they should be. I even talked about my life. I talked about when my parents came over. So I gave them all that. So I made it personal. So I gave them talking about my own kids. How my kids have done, and maybe I think some of them felt a bit like, after listening to me, that maybe they were a bit too soft with their kids, and they allowed the kids to do probably too much. So we unpicked all that, and we just set some boundaries, and we set some rules, and we're gonna meet on a regular basis. And each child had like a report card, and I said to them, if you are struggling, you've got other people now in the group. Some of them didn't even know each other. The only link they had was they're either black or mixed race. That was it. And a lot of them had not even, and they became friends. They became friends after that. And we took them away on a trip as well, just to get them bonding, things like that. And we used sport, we used football. We did so many little activities with them. And it was really inspiring. Even when we took them away, we took some parents with us as well. So the police came with us. We had a really good mix of people. We took to like an outdoor pursuit centre where they stayed overnight for 2 or 3 nights. It was just brilliant. And when it came down to the GCSE exams, and when they outperformed a lot of other teachers were in shock. That's why we got this award in 2006.
I think it's a bit of a tenuous thread. But the reason I ask as well is because I try and apply that concept to the way that we deal with recruitment. So whether it's recruitment in policing, whether it's recruitment in the fire service, like when we have this group of diverse individuals, different ages, different backgrounds, there's the whole storming, norming, reforming and all that sort of jazz. I probably got them in the wrong order. But like bringing the group together, I think there's a lot to be said for involving the families, because when you embark on a career in the emergency services, I know that it's like teaching. They say it's more, I think they should do this for teachers actually. Now is another good point, because teaching, similar to first responding, it's more than a job. It's a vocation, isn't it? It consumes so much more of your life. You're doing it inside the job, outside of the job, and also the things you onboard as part of it. So as first responders, the trauma, the difficult hours, as a police officer, the way that they're treated, onboarding all of that, the lack of sleep for teachers, bringing all of the challenges home. My missus regularly comes home and has to unload about a certain class or a way that she was treated, or how she, had to wrestle with the way that she was engaging and speaking with this kid, a bit harder, a bit softer, all this sort of jazz. And I think if you can bring the families along, because there's nothing worse, and I see this with paramedics actually, and police isn't getting much better, to be fair, short careers.
Yeah.
People get into it, they spend 2 or 3 years training. Some of the fire services might spend 2 years training. We've invested all this money and time.
Yeah.
But because it's so difficult for them, because maybe it doesn't, mesh with their family life, they drop out of the job. Yeah. Other people don't understand it. Their family don't understand why they're doing this extra application, all this additional work they have to do for it, and all this sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. And I think a lot of the great stuff that we do in schools, problem is we leave it at schools, even so far as when you said you made yourself personal, you spoke about your own background.
Yeah.
I think that's something that a lot of teachers and instructors, and people that teach in the emergency services and training schools should be doing so much more of. We have this idea of professionalism where we should all become homogenous, just cut and copy paste of each other. Yeah. But that's not that. 90% of the best parts of Nigel is him.
Yeah.
It's not his qualification. It's not his jacket. It's him. It's his gregariousness spirit that's within him. And we should all be unique. We shouldn't all aspire to make everybody the same.
I think you're right, because I remember I even had, just before COVID, I worked as what you call a DARE officer. Mm-hmm. It's a PSHE program in Nottinghamshire. And I remember being trained by this ex-cop, and we went to a school, and he was observing me, and I got a bit personal with the kids and saying to them, look, when I was your age, I did some things that wrong. And he actually ripped me to bits. He said, "Oh, you shouldn't talk to him about what you did." When
I talk about my drug addictions.
And that's what I mean.
I
said to him, "Hang on,
why?
There's nothing wrong with that."
Yeah. I'm not saying I do it now. But you want me to pretend to be perfect. You can't engage with perfect, because people listening to you, they're not perfect. And they're like, well, this person's nothing like me, because my life is a walking bin fire.
I've got kids. I work on another job I do. I work on Saturdays. I work for the youth justice on Saturday. Okay. I've been doing that for the last 8 years. A lovely lady called Gurmit, and she got me to volunteer 8 years ago, and I'm now a paid employee. So I do 2 hours session every Saturday morning in an area in Nottingham. And when I talk to the young people about, cause it's a knife crime program. So we do 7 weeks trying to deter them from knives. And I can tell you now, week 3, week 4, I actually look at the young people and I say to them, okay, if I was 15, 16 now in living in your area, having your stresses and and your thought patterns, I would probably be carrying a knife as well. Mm-hmm. And I say that to them, and they look at me and I go, well, I'm trying to stop you from carrying it, but with your lifestyle and what you do and the people that surround you, I would probably be doing the same. And
help people understand that a little bit more from the people that you work with, because again, there's older generations that won't understand why someone would ever seek to that. I remember when I worked the doors when I was in my late teens and early 20s, and that was around when it was about 16 years ago, and that's when, for me, I started to see a lot more knife. That's when I stopped working on the doors, because
Yeah.
a lot of people started carrying knives, and a lot of my friends and people that I was working with were either stabbed or attacked.
Yeah.
Why do you think there was such a growth in knife crime? In
I think
carrying
for
in
me,
general?
I could say trend, but at the end of the day, when I work with these young people about knife crime, it's a mindset. I don't think the media help. I'll give you an example. This young lad said to me that he feels safer when he carries a knife. He said if he goes to the shop, which is a 2-minute walk down the road, he still felt safer carrying it. Mm-hmm. And I used to say to him, "Well, that's more like paranoia." Because at the end of the day, you are safe. You know that shop. Nobody's around. But even when I was teaching him, doing a one-to-one, he sat there and his right leg was shaking. And he couldn't stop his leg shaking. And the reason why it was shaking, because he said he didn't have his weapon on him. So he didn't feel safe.
Felt naked, yeah. Felt vulnerable.
Yes. So for me, even primary school kids now are carrying weapons. Primary school, you're talking 8, 9, 10-year-olds are going to school with a weapon in their bag. And I think it's because they've been told by so many other people that knife crime is on the up. And in the kids' mind, I've been to events where there's got 200 people there. It's a knife crime event. They have singers on there. They have speakers on there. And there's young kids in that audience. Are sitting listening to this. And not every single child's the same. So they're thinking, some are thinking, I'm never going to carry a weapon. A few others might sit there and thinking, this is scary. I think I need to carry a weapon.
Yeah.
Every child's different. So I think sometimes we don't allow for that. But like you said earlier on about when you teach them, it's about the mindset, and it's about who they're mixing with the area they live, and how it's sold. I'll give you an example. We've got an area in Nottinghamshire called St Anne's. Years ago, you used to call it Shottingham. Years ago, bad name. Now, if you live in that area and you constantly hear the media people telling you it's a bad area, everybody carries a weapon, be careful. Growing up as a child, when you get to a certain age, you're going to think, I need to carry a weapon. But if all of a sudden you hear reports, it's dropped. It's gone from 85% to 20%. People aren't carrying knives anymore. It's a lot safer place to live. The streets look nicer. They're putting more trees there, and the schools are getting better. You're going to think, you know what? I don't need to carry a weapon anymore. It can be as simple as that.
The media has a lot to own on this. Like I say the same with children getting abducted. Like my daughter started to get a fear that she was going to get snatched. She had this fear, and I was like, who do you know? Who do you know that's been taken?
Yeah.
No one. Okay. What story have you seen that someone's been taken? Well, I haven't, but I've heard things. And I'm like, I think the world in many ways, call me naive, call me whatever, it's a safer place than it's probably ever been.
Yeah,
in so many regards. But we create a massive amount of fear through this salacious media thread. I mean, like this podcast, we never slag anybody off on it. We don't talk about the big disciplinaries or the person that's stolen something. There's plenty of bad stories going on in the emergency services if you wanted to talk about them. But I want to speak into a future that I want to see more of. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to be the bad news. The problem is the bad news stories are so much more popular.
Yeah,
they're always news headline. I can't even watch the news. I just think they've been caught lying so many goddamn times. It's painful to watch it. Even with some of the recent bombings and stuff, and you're like, well, that didn't even happen. And then they don't come out and apologise for it. But you've created so much fear within that person. Is there an element here about... We had Ben Pearson on the podcast recently, who was the star of Channel 5 Interceptors. Yeah. He was in the police for many, 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 many years. And he was talking about policing by force and policing by...
consent?
Yeah, consent. Thank you very much. And he said, he asked me, he said, where have you been lately, Pete? You been on holiday? I said, yeah, well, I went to Rome recently. And he was like, okay, you went to the Rome, Vatican. Okay, was there anybody carrying a weapon? I was like, oh, yeah, I think all the police over there carry a firearm.
That's right.
I said, did you feel scared? No, actually, I felt safer. Because like when the Americans say more guns, more people get shot or something like that, when we acknowledge, and to bring this back to our conversation, if we acknowledge that a lot of people are carrying knives, but we don't empower our police. And I'm not saying people should go out on the streets and go, that it needs to be a fair fight. But I think I don't have faith that if someone were to come and attack my home now, I'm not sure a police officer would turn up very quickly, because I know the police in this local area, and there might be one or two of them covering a very, very large radius of this area. And that therefore encourages people. And even if I rang them and said, there's this person standing in my driveway hurling abuse, saying they're going to come inside and do something, unless they come inside and do something. And again, I don't want us to start throwing stones at the police, but just help me unpick that a little bit around policing in general. And in fact, take us back. How did you get involved in policing? Because this was again part of the conversation that I first heard from you.
You're talking, just after COVID. I was, I did this thing called DARE. I told you I was a DARE officer going into schools. So basically, we were furloughed, and because the police put so much money into DARE, we were asked if we could volunteer. So I volunteered for the police because the chief constable at the time was a friend of mine. He still is. He's gone to West Mid now. So basically, I volunteered for the police, and I was in the careers department. So I volunteered in the careers department, and they were really struggling going into schools, and they couldn't get into us. They couldn't get into a lot of schools because schools said we don't want the police. But because I was a former teacher, I knew that society of schools. So I knew the head teachers of schools and heads of year. So I could get in quite easily. So I went in there. But I did it differently. They would go in and sort of lecture. I didn't. I'd walk in with a big holdall, right? And this holdall contained uniform, helmets, hats, handcuffs, stab-proof vests, things like that. And I used to get the kids to try stuff on. And because I know kids like dressing up, and we'd go into a girls' school, and the girls were putting all this gear on and Instagramming it and things like that. And it got them talking. So I did it differently. And about a year and a half ago, after doing careers, they asked me to write this program about black history, especially around the policing and how black people treated in the 70s and 80s. Well, for me, I grew up in the 70s and 80s in London, so I could tell them all the things that I went through. So I wrote the program for training school, gave it to them, walked away, and then I got called back in by the chief constable at the time saying, we'd like you to deliver this program. So I literally looked at her at the time and said, I can deliver it. I said, but I can only deliver it till December 2023 because I'm retiring. I'm semi-retired. I'm going back to Barbados for a while. And she looked at me, really upset. I said, is there a problem? She said, yeah, but I wanted you to train all our police officers, all our staff. You're talking 4,000 people in Nottinghamshire, but you're leaving. So anyway, she persuaded, to cut long story short, she persuaded me to come back. So I set up my own company. It's called Best Practice. I started that January 2024. It's still going strong. I'm now working with 3 forces, West Mids, British Transport and Nottinghamshire. So for me, the training I do, every single one I've done 3,500 people so far.
Wow.
3,500. Every single one of them, and I'm not just saying this, have walked out my training or room with a smile on their face. And they've all come up to me at the end saying, I was dreading doing this. I thought we were going to get another bashing. But walking out, your training is different. That's what makes it different. He said, the way you present, you don't make us feel bad about ourselves. I thought, wow, that's pretty good. That's a nice compliment.
Yeah. I can relate to that. Like you say, whenever we get a lot of, equality, diversity, inclusion, education around societal challenges, it does feel like this unseen privilege thing where you feel like you're supposed to apologize for existing. You're like, Pete, you're a 6'5" white male. You're everything that's wrong with society. And I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to do with that? I just apologize for existing.
Yeah.
Like, why do you think this type of training is so very much needed, and why people take such value from it? It is beyond a privilege to be able to bring the Firefighters podcast to you, and we are so grateful for every single person that supports, listens, shares, and follows our journey. But here's the honest truth. It takes a colossal amount of time and work to keep the podcast going. And to help us keep doing it, create more, reach more guests internationally, and make the podcast sustainable, we're asking for you to help. And to do this, we've set up a Patreon page. Now, by joining this, you'll not only support the future of the podcast, but also gain access to exclusive benefits. Now, if you've ever wanted to meet a member of the podcast, buy us a beer, buy us a coffee, and you think anything you've ever listened to on the podcast has been worth £3, that's basically what we're asking you for. By joining our Patreon community, you will get access to every single full episode archive we have ever made. Now, hundreds and hundreds of key documents that we've got in there on fire behavior, firefighter health, cancer risks, instant debriefs, and so much more. A growing collection of valuable resources to help you learn and grow. So by joining the Patreon for just £3, you'll unlock everything we've ever created alongside discounts on merch, your support in whatever way, dropping it in the WhatsApp group, sharing it on the local newsletter, whatever it is. It's incredibly valuable and we really do support it, and we need it to make it a long-lasting resource, that legacy resource we always talk about for first responders, firefighters, and everybody everywhere who's ever been interested in joining the fire service or who absolutely loves the job. Now, if you're already supporting something, as many people do, it's totally cool. You can still access the podcast for free, and you'll always be able to access all the new episodes for free, but we're asking for your help to make this sustainable. And if you want to do something free, follow us on our YouTube, subscribe to it, rate us on Spotify, whatever platform you listen to, and we want to keep growing, we want to keep sharing the insights, and we want to keep showcasing the incredible work happening in our community and our sector. So if you feel like you want to join the Patreon crew and help us make this possible, head to patreon.com/TFFPC or check the link in any episode podcast notes. Thank you for supporting us. We'll see you on the other side.
I mean, I think it's needed. It's funny we should say that, because Mr. Trump in America is now getting rid of any diversity training whatsoever. He's getting rid of it all, which makes me smile. Yeah. I think it's needed because it's a bit of an understanding and awareness. Because when I do my training, especially if it's personal to me, like we talked about earlier, I talk about how it felt for me in the 70s and 80s, growing up in London, police stopping you on the street, arresting you because you look suspicious. And that came under a law called a sus law. It was called a suspicious law in the 70s and 80s. And that sus law, when they unpicked it and looked at the data, 85 to 90% of the people stopped and arrested on that law were black or Asian. And thank God they got rid of that particular law. So when I talk to them, I'm talking from a personal point of view. Even my kids have been stopped where they've gone to the bus stop across the road from the house, and the police car's pulled up and ask them what they're doing in the area. And my son will look at them and say, because I live over there. So it's all about real life experience. And I think that's why it's needed, because not every police officer will probably need it, because like you, Pete, if you've grown up in a diverse society, you probably get it. Mm-hmm. A lot of police officers might have lived in a village, might have never come across any black or Asian people. They're the ones that need it. The ones that might have a bit of experience of it sometimes have forgotten it. And the analogy I would probably give you is that one of my neighbours across the road, he's a great guy, he's a plumber. And he said to me, when he was a plumber, every 5 years, you've got to go for training to become Corgi registered. Mm-hmm. If you don't do this it costs $5,000 at the time, probably more now. Every 5 years, you've got to make sure you've got money to update your Corgi. Now I'm thinking, wouldn't it be great if everybody did that? Every 5 years or less, you go and do some training just to switch you back on, sort of thing.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think that would work.
So what do you think are some of the biggest challenges facing policing now, given that you work? I know you do a lot of leadership and development work as well, which is something that I'd love to ask you about. But what are some of the biggest challenges we're facing now in terms of recruitment? Because selling it, I think, is one of the biggest challenges. And we have this with the fire and rescue service. So maybe I could ask that question in two layers is, what's the value of being part of the first responder community? And what do you think some of the challenges we're facing around getting diverse people into the community?
For me, excuse me, getting diverse people into the community, I get the example I can give you. I remember going into a college, a couple of years ago, and wearing a police uniform, and we got a lot of hostility. And I remember there was a couple of black kids at the back giving it all that. And I actually said to them, look, if you want to change it, you have to be part of it. Yeah. We can always moan. We can moan all day. But at the end of the day, if you want to change it. So anyway, I convinced this young lady to come into training school with me. And I gave her a whole tour of the headquarters. We went to the dog section, we went to firearms, we went to the control room. And I gave her a whole tour, and she was completely gobsmacked. And then it turns out that she found out I was from Barbados, her dad's from Barbados, so we got chatting a bit more. And I really gave her the personal touch. And I said to her, you would make a really good police officer. And she said, why would I do that? I said, because your communication skills, how you are with people, and you're so approachable. And I really sold it to her. And within a couple of weeks, she was applying. She's now in her second year of the PCDA, which is Police Constable Degree Apprenticeship. She's in her second year. She now goes into schools. She brought 6 other people with her in the last year.
Wow.
Mostly black or mixed race girls she's brought into our force. Now, for me, big challenge is recruiting, but I think we need to sometimes, because what happens is you get a lot of black officers, they join the police, they're in there, but sometimes they forget about, okay, I'm in now, so maybe I should be bringing more. You know, it's a bit like, I remember Jamie Oliver doing this something years ago where he was cooking into different areas, especially up north, and it was called Pass It On.
Yeah.
It was called Pass It On, and I'll never forget it. And his way of, if I teach one person to cook who doesn't cook, I used to say to him, pass it on to somebody else.
It's a life skill.
So and I think that sort of thing we should be doing. A lot of black officers out there could easily do a bit more. Because sometimes people get to a job and think, I'm here now. I don't have to worry about anything else.
I made it.
And I think that's where we're missing that.
Total transparency, that's one of the reasons I started the podcast. This is the thing I wish existed when I was trying to get into it, because I couldn't really find out much about it. Unless I was brave enough, which luckily for me I was, because I was a big, strong, white, young man. I was brave enough to go down to the local fire station and ask some questions. But a lot of people won't. You think a lot of people can voluntarily go to a police station and ask, can I come inside? You might not let me out again. You know what I mean? You might ask me questions about, have I got a criminal record? You know, all of this sort of stuff. The other thing about it as well, I don't know, the other day, I was talking to, when I was doing some training in Birmingham, a young lad came up to me at the end, a mixed race lad, never forget, his name's Sam. And Sam said to me, the chief up there, who's our old chief, has come up with a new scheme for senior leaders to mentor black police officers and mixed race police officers. Mm-hmm. He said to me, I don't like the idea. I don't want any help. I don't want any help. I've never experienced racism all my life. I don't need the help. We should get it on my own merit. He went on off at a tangent, and I stopped him. I said, look, mate, the problem, if you haven't experienced racism, you're just starting your job as a police officer. You haven't even been out in the street yet. Mm. So he will experience it whether he likes it or not. Mm-hmm. I said, the problem is, Sam, not everybody is like you. Mm-hmm. There's going to be black officers there who might have experienced racism all their life. They've come into the police to try and change it. Your chief is trying to support you by saying he thinks it's a great idea. And I'm not sure if you heard about the project. It's where senior leaders mentor the black officers and black officers mentor the senior leaders, like reverse mentoring. Mm. Yeah.
And he's come up with the idea. And I said to him, that's a fantastic idea. I said, but then I said to him, you're moaning about it, but you don't have to do it. If you don't want to do it, just send an email saying, I don't want to be part of this.
I'm part of it, yeah. I always think it's the difference between equality and equity. And what I mean by that is equality is giving everybody the same opportunities. But if I turn up for the have a go selection day and they go, Pete, I know you're a size 13, but we've also got size 11, 12, 10, 8, 7, 6. And I go, why have you brought a load of size 7 boots? You know, I mean, what's the point? I don't need size 7. You might not, Pete. But if we just gave everybody a size 13 boot, a lot of them aren't going to perform very well. They might feel inferior. They might not be able to. And I know it sounds like a facetious, silly example.
Yeah.
But I say for people, you might not need it. That's fine. But what we're trying to do is bring everybody up to the same level to give them same access and the same opportunity. So for you, it will be irrelevant because you don't need it. Like on my computer at work, there's read-write software. I'm not dyslexic. Yeah, actually, I do love dictating with it because it's a lot easier than typing. Yeah. But for somebody, they'll go, what a waste of money. You know, and I know, again, that might be a facetious, silly one if you're not neurodiverse and you go, well, obviously, some people aren't very literate. It's the same thing. You're not giving somebody a leg up. You're trying to help them get to the start line.
Yeah. That's what it is.
Because they're coming in with all of these, and I think of this with girls and women coming into fire and rescue service.
Yeah.
They feel like an imposter from day one. You know, I'm not a big, strong person. All the pictures that I see, all the people on the Firefighter Challenge stuff, all the calendars I've ever seen, big, strong, white males. I'm going to fail at this.
Yeah.
You know, there's a thing that the women in the fire service say, you've got to see it to be it. And they do a lot of reverse mentoring with senior leaders that help women just access the same abilities. Because there'd be nothing stopping me wandering into the next office and just asking Nige for a bit of advice on my application because I wouldn't think twice not to do it.
It's as simple as that.
They will feel like, oh, someone going to say it's nepotism? Am I getting special treatment? I don't want to be treated as different.
Yeah.
You're not doing anything that anybody else wouldn't do. You're not doing anything anybody else wouldn't do. But it's the difference between obvious and oblivious. It's such a subtle difference. I always say to people, I love that little wordplay game, the obvious and oblivious, because to you, you've not come from that mindset. You've not had that same upbringing.
That's right.
You won't even factor this in to your mental model, because why would you feel unwelcome? Everyone you see is like you.
If you're a regular listener to the podcast, then chances are you are big into your own personal development and the development of firefighters around you. So I wanted to remind you of our mobile app Drill Book. This is a free training and development resources made by firefighters for firefighters. Heading on to Drillbook, you will find incident debriefs, radio messages, knots and lines, quick reference guides, quizzes every single day. We've got useful links to the ERG, to Web Rescue, to Jessup, Euro Rescue, 10-second triage, National Operational Guidance, and not to mention our daily quizzes where you will find questions on extrication, casualty handling, breathing apparatus, fire development, water rescue, rope rescue, you name it. It is the go-to resource if you've got a spare 5 minutes on the firehouse to develop yourself and those around you. Not only that, if you're looking to get into the fire service, we've got advice on there on interview questions, interview answers. You can build your own questioning in there. And again, remember, this is built by firefighters for firefighters, so you can add your own drills in there. You can pick the drills that you find the most favorite. There is literally hundreds of training ideas, hundreds of drills in there. Remember, this app is absolutely free and it grows every single day down to the contributions of our thousands and thousands of users. It's freely available on Android, Apple, and you will find it in the links for this podcast. Remember, it's called personal development. The clue's in the name. You've got to work twice as hard on yourself as you do on the job. So always be growing, always be developing. Now let's get back to the show.
I suppose it's a bit like I was reading something the other day where, you know, when I do my training, I get them all sat down in like a horseshoe sort of shape. We get the desk out of the way. It's just you and me. Just a chair, sat down. You don't need your phone. And I read something the other day and I hadn't even thought about it. And then it made me think, when they walk into my room, sometimes I've got the average of 20 people in the room. I do divisional training as well. So sometimes we might have 160 in a room. If you've got black or Asian officers walking into my room, they're coming into my training with a totally different mindset to everybody else. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't even considered that until recently. And I kept thinking, they're coming in with a different mindset. Some of them come in with a mindset of they know already a lot of stuff I'm going to be talking about. But others come in and they haven't got a clue about black history. They haven't got a clue. And I'm explaining to them. And even the ones that know a lot will take a bit out of it, and it's nice for them, it's refreshing for them to hopefully me sort of like rewiring them sort of thing.
Yeah, 100%. I always think the same with uniforms as well, and we're not going to go too far down this rabbit hole because I want to be respectful of your time, but I've got a big thing against white shirts in organisations. And I wear a white shirt now. I hate it. I fought for about 3 years to not wear my white shirt until it almost became a performance and capability thing where they were like, we've issued you with a uniform, wear the uniform. Stop being basically. But I'm like, you don't understand that is a barrier. Yeah. That is a barrier. Because the rest of us in my organisation, we all wear blue. Yeah. Everybody at firefighter, crew manager, watch commander, they all wear blue. Blue t-shirts, blue trousers, blue fleeces, because we're the grafters or whatever. Other organisations like us visited Staffordshire recently, or everyone, all the way up to the chief, they wear black t-shirts. Yeah. They just have a name badge. Yeah. I think a white shirt is a barrier. A white shirt and a tie screams authority. It says one of two things. It says either I'm better than you or I'm different from you. It's what it's my personal experience with them. I'm not saying everyone has to change to facilitate me, but even from a cost perspective, I'm like, white shirts are hard to maintain. You've got to wash them all the time. You've got to iron them. If we've got two uniform suppliers, and I'm like, the people that fight hard to keep it, I'm like, You just want it because it makes you look important.
It makes you look important.
Yeah, and people go, no, it's because of the rank. I'm like, so the rank is relevant when we're on the incident ground. Yeah, there's not going to be a requirement for me to take over a level 1, level 2, level 3 incident.
Yeah.
In the office. I don't need to wear rank markings in the office and a white shirt because I'm sat there working with Nigel from Human Resources. I'm working with Sarah from Accounts. I'm working with so-and-so from Procurement and HR. They don't wear a white shirt and a rank because it's irrelevant.
Yeah,
but it acts as a barrier in all of these meetings, just these different engagements, these different environments. And that's the thing with our command and control structure. Sorry, I'm dragging you down this rabbit hole.
No.
Like,
I know exactly
I
what you
think
mean.
it's important, and I think we just need to get rid of them.
Yeah.
But I think people are so romantically linked to it. But anyway, it's those unseen barriers, isn't it?
Well, all our senior leaders in the police, like you said, all wear white.
Yeah.
White shirts and they've got all the pips, things like that. And you're right, it is a barrier because when I go into a school and the kids say they hate the police, I said, no, you don't hate the police, you hate the uniform.
Yeah.
You don't know that person. That person behind the uniform, if that person walked past you over the weekend and he's shopping with his wife, you wouldn't recognise him as a police officer. No. He's just got a pair of jeans and perhaps a hoodie on.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's, you have to sort of get that over to young people when you're trying to recruit as well. And that seems to work as well when they actually understand that.
100%, mate, 100%. Like, I want to be respectful of your time. Before we wrap it up, firstly, what's the best place to go for people to find out more? We're going to drop some links below here, probably one to your LinkedIn, but how would you prefer people communicate with you if they want to find a bit more information, if they want some support or assistance?
LinkedIn's probably the best one. Definitely LinkedIn because with me sort of like semi-retired, I don't need a website. I don't need stuff like that. I just think just face-to-face or list LinkedIn, and then I can give them a call or send them a message, things like that. I've enjoyed it, mate.
Beautiful, mate. Absolutely love that. Is there any closing thoughts, anything you think we've missed that you want to circle back to, something you want to leave in the mind of the listener as we wrap it up?
For me, I just wish that people would. I was listening to a lovely podcast the other day. Have you listened to Jake Humphreys?
High Performance.
Yeah,
I actually much prefer Damien Hughes, who obviously is the guy that works with him. His emotional intelligence is so high. He's amazing. Really lovely, softly spoken bloke.
Have you listened to the Chatterjee one, Dr. Chatterjee?
Ranjan Chatterjee.
Yeah.
I absolutely, when he had Mo Gaudat on and they were talking about the 5 regrets of the dying, oh my God, mate.
I love their
episodes. I love Ranjan. He's great.
But Ranjan, what I love about him, he mentioned the other day, we're in a society, this is my lasting bit now, we're in a society where everybody, so many things, we're talking about people feeling, what's the word he used, offensive.
Yep.
Everything's offensive, and it could be something minute. And he talked about if you're in a room with 100 people, and he says something, you get more. One person might think, "Oh, that's offensive." All the 100 people aren't going to think it's offensive. No. So his argument is that even if something is said that's offensive to somebody, try and unpick it.
Yeah,
find out why that's offensive. And the other one I would say, Pete, is that I'll give an example. When one of the training days that I do with young people, with police officers, one of the training days. So my missus just walked in.
Here she is. Hello, my love. You're right. You're okay. Don't worry. We're nearly finished. She's a good egg.
Taking our daughter to the station. All right, the last thing I want to leave you with is that one of the videos that we show at when I'm doing my training, there's a lovely video. There's a guy called Staff G. It's on YouTube. It's called The Black Cop. It's a great short film. It's called The Black Cop, and his name's Staff G. And what Staff G talks about is when he's 8 or 9 years old, he is with his mate, his white Irish mate, and they're running down the street, and they see a police officer walking towards them. And his white mate runs up and he says, "Hello, Mr. Policeman." And the policeman says, "Hello, young man," and goes into his pocket and gives him a couple of coins. Right? The black kid, G, does exactly the same thing. And he runs up to police and he says, "Hello, Mr. Policeman." And the policeman tells him to go forth and multiply. There you go. You black. And he gives him all the names. And I would love to speak to that police officer and say, "Why did you say that to that kid? Wouldn't it be nicer if you'd that first reaction, if you'd have said, given him a couple of coins like you did the other one, and he said, when the minute the words hit him at a 9-year-old, he said, that's the first time I realised I was black. And then he said, from that day, I hated police.
Yeah.
Now, where's the root? Why did that police officer say it? Where was he brought up? Who did he mix with to make him think that I can swear at that kid at 8 or 9 years old?
Mate, I think that with all first
unpicking.
responders, and I speak to recruits about it, I said there's no innocent interactions. Every interaction you have with the public is adding weight to one side of the scales.
Yeah.
Because you will be the story that they tell. They'll go, you know what, I did meet a police officer once. What was his name? Was his name Nigel? And he was this, or he was that, or he was, this way or that way, or Pete was like this, or Sarah was like that. And you will be the embodiment of their perception of policing, or their perception of fire and rescue, or their perception of what a paramedic or what a doctor is. Yeah. So there's no innocent interactions. Be very, very conscious about the way you communicate with people, because it means a lot. You're standing on the shoulders of giants. You are the representation of their global identity of first responders.
Without a doubt. That's it.
Beautiful. Nigel, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Please send my love to your family and your wife for giving me you for an hour this morning. And I really look forward to speaking with you soon, mate. Thank you.
Cheers, mate.
The Firefighters Podcast was created to recognize, acknowledge, inspire, and hopefully even motivate these incredible individuals who have chosen to be part of the first responder community. Our driving purpose is to create a legacy resource for the current and future generations of firefighters and first responders. We get some incredible feedback from listeners and guests, and as the podcast grows, our desire to create longevity and sustainability means that we are asking for the support of our listeners. If you want to support the podcast, if you want to get discounts to our merchandise, hoodies, clothing, coins, patches, and also access to all of the incredible documents get shared with us from our podcast guests and sector leaders. And please head over to our Patreon page, and for just £3 a month, you can support the future of the podcast. Please finally hit that follow, subscribe, or rate button on the platform you're listening. And wherever you're in the world, please support your emergency services responders. And thank you for listening.